Hello and welcome to this Iris session brought to you by BrightRock. My name is David O'Sullivan. BrightRock is a financial services provider. It operates in the life insurance market, and its interest in change and how it affects people derives from the fact that its life insurance offering is uniquely structured to change at times like this. So why am I telling you this? Because BrightRock started the Change Exchange. It's an online resource center that provides people with a safe space to ask questions, to share knowledge, which is exactly what we're going to do on this particular session. We're going to help you access tools to help you cope with life's biggest change moments. And we put those two words, change moments, in capital letters to emphasize it. These are times where everything from one's sense of identity to one's personal finances are being challenged, like when you start a new job, when you start a family, or, as we're going to discuss on this particular session, when you go off the grid. And we have three experts who are going to help us challenge this idea and see if it is, in fact, a feasible one. Let me introduce them to you. The first person we have is that man. His name is Adam Oxford. He's the editor-in-chief of Hypertext Media. It's a South African publishing house that specializes in technology issues from across the continent. It provides daily news at htxt.co.za. He's originally from England, which is why you're going to hear that accent, and I'm going to rely on him to tell us more about the technology. Welcome to you, Adam. We also have Evan Rice, who tells me he's a former Gautenger, but he's now settled in beautiful Sea Point down in the Cape. He's the CEO of Green Cape. It's a sector development agency set up by the Western Cape government and the city of Cape Town. Well, what do? They are accelerating the development of the green economy, and they're helping position the Cape as the green economic hub of the continent. Evan, welcome to you. And here's a very interesting man. His name is Ryan Beach. He heads up the energy portfolio in the Parkhurst Village Residents and Business Owners Association. What is happening in Parkhurst, a small suburb of Johannesburg, is that they plan to go off the grid. And I'm going to start with you, Ryan. First of all, you have to explain the technology behind you very quickly, because it does look very intriguing. It looks like you've got a drone behind your left shoulder. Is that right?
Correct, David. It's an AI, artificial intelligence drone that my robotics company is developing for a mine. This unit is a confined space robotic unit, as well with CCTV, but we also add other sensory equipment like LiDAR, sonar, lots and lots of sensors. Yeah, just cool toys and gadgets.
And you've got a wind turbine also behind you. I'm going to ask you a little bit more about that later. But let's start with this initiative that the Parkhurst Residents Association is embarking on, the idea of going off the grid. Is this a pipe dream? If it isn't, when do you hope to get off the grid and not be reliant on Eskom for your power?
David, no, it's not a pipe dream. You know, it's not a short-term goal. We've set a long-term goal. We want to do it over the next 5 years. We think it's very doable. Technology is getting cheaper by the day. Electricity in this country is going to get more and more expensive. So, you know, we feel it's going to be a natural migration, and more and more people are going to do it. And we just want to make that process easier for them, and hopefully accelerate it as well.
And by when do you expect to go off the grid? All things being equal, if the plans go according to your projections?
Our goal is 2020. It's a very big project. It's not just about renewable energy. We're looking at green transport, food, recycling. It's a whole go green project, but the entire project we want to roll out by 2020.
Ryan, how feasible is it from a cost point of view to go off the grid?
Well, the reason I started this project was because, you know, I said to myself, even if it's not affordable, then we're going to make this affordable. And that's exactly what we went and did. You know, we've negotiated huge deals with suppliers, you know, the biggest suppliers in the country. You know, you can basically get a massive solar system installed with the deals we organized for under 100 grand. You know, people were paying 150, 200 grand previously for that system. But, you know, the mindset we had is, what, you know, if it wasn't affordable, we were going to make it affordable, and that's exactly what we did. So it is feasible. You know, you need to do it cleverly, and just you need to go with numbers and negotiate deals, and then it becomes very feasible.
I suppose possibly in a suburb like Parkhurst, where people are reasonably affluent, and I will stress the word reasonably, I'm sure though that there would be some kind of pushback at an investment of 100,000 rand. I understand that you're going to get it back down the line, but it's quite a big capital outlay first up. How have residents reacted to that kind of number?
Well, the other thing we did is we structured all the packages that they're modular. So you can start off with a 10,000-20,000 rand package today, and every year you can just add panels, batteries as you've got money. So we were very conscious of the fact that not everybody's got 100,000 rand to go off the grid right now. So that's why this is also a 5-year project. We were hoping to get at least 80% of the people this year on the entry-level to mid-level system. Then over the next 5 years, they can upgrade. They can buy extra panels. They can buy extra batteries. They can, you can build until you eventually get off the grid.
Where do people put the panels? Parkhurst residents are pretty small. Where do you don't have acres and acres of land to put your panels. Are they all on the roof?
Well, our whole mindset is you first need to reduce your consumption, and we found that solar on its own will never ever be the be-all and end-all. You need to run a hybrid solution. So we are telling people to go with 50% gas, 50% solar. We've got natural gas in the area, and we also want to start creating biogas. But when you use other resources such as natural gas, you actually don't need such a big solar system. Solar panels are becoming more and more efficient. I mean, you get 250 watt panels these days, not 100 watt anymore. We get solar tracking systems that are actually very affordable. We've been speaking to people who do that increases the efficiency greatly. You actually don't need a lot of space if you just, again, do it very clever.
I forgot that you've got that piped gas, which I think is the envy of so many suburbs. You are such an old suburb, and it was the time when gas was piped, and I forget that actually is something that you can use. To Evan, let me go to you now. I'm sure that at Green Cape you have a look at what Parkhurst is up to. Is it feasible for an entire suburb to go off the grid? Is it feasible for a household to say we're not going to be subject to what the municipality or Eskom offers us? Is that a reality?
Yeah, David, I think there's a lot of interest in it from people just feeling, I guess, fed up and looking for alternative solutions. And of course, it's possible for people to go off the grid. It just depends on what it's going to cost and how much you've got available to you. But I think to do it at a suburb level, obviously you're going to get scale benefits. You're going to be able to negotiate better prices. At the end of the day, I think the entire system benefits from having people still connected to the grid. The question is how much are you actually drawing from the grid, and or whether you're feeding back into the grid when you're not using, can your batteries be used as something that stores power for the grid? I think we're moving towards a future of more distributed generation, but I still think that the grid will continue to play a role in our electricity landscape for quite a while.
You're saying that you can't go off the grid? Is that what I'm hearing? It is, you can't go off the grid.
No, you absolutely can go off the grid. I mean, if you put in a system with diesel generators or solar panels with batteries, you can produce all the power you need as long as you've got some storage capacity. As he was saying, if you've got gas and solar, you can disconnect from Eskom tomorrow. The question is whether that's still going to be the most cost-effective solution for you, and I think at this point in time it probably still isn't. Going into the future, who knows when that point is exactly going to cross, but I think looking at it from the system as a whole, it's better if users actually do stay ultimately connected to the grid in some kind of aggregated form or an individual form, because you've got economies of scale, you've got the amounts of power being produced, being utilized where you need it at any given time. But these embedded generation systems and producing your own power is suddenly becoming competitive with retail tariffs. So the whole nature of the game is changing. And I think we're going to see a huge shift over the next few years towards households, but businesses for sure, but ultimately households as well, starting to generate a good portion of their own power.
Adam, let me bring you in at this point. How quickly is technology changing, and how affordable is technology becoming to allow people to go off the grid?
Well, see, now we run a lot of figures at work, and we reckon we're already at tipping point. I mean, you can install solar now, and if you're prepared to go for a 10-year payoff period, it's cheaper to install solar than Eskom, according to our figures, the ones we've looked at. The thing that amazes me is that there is nobody who is putting together there's no banks out there who are putting together a financing package to say, install solar, pay it off for, I don't know, 1,500 rand a month for the next 10 years, and you're paying more or less the same as you're paying for Eskom electricity, but you're getting the solar installation there. The thing is, I mean, what Evan was saying that's interesting is one of the problems that they've run into down in Cape Town, which is one of the first areas that's introduced a feed-in tariff, so that you don't have to carry your own storage, is that they've realised very early on there that losing rich customers from the grid is actually a really bad thing, because more than 50% of South Africans rely on subsidised electricity. So what Cape Town have realised is that they have to increase the standing charge for people who want to remain grid-tied to the extent that it's not economical down there to go with a grid-tied system. You're far better off using a storage system where you're completely independent. And as Evan said, that's not necessarily the best thing for the country as a whole.
Ryan, have you found what Adam was saying, that we are at the tipping point where it's becoming cost effective to go off grid?
I totally agree. I mean, we're busy working through the proposals, and the pricing I've seen. I mean, you can get really very big systems for not a lot of money. My personal view on this, but we negotiated very high quality packages, but we also mid-level to cheaper quality packages for our residents. My view on this is you don't need to go for the most expensive, because it's like IT. The technology changes every day. You don't want a solar panel that lasts 20 years. You don't want a battery that lasts 20 years, because it's going to be outdated in 10 years. So why go spend 150k on the best German stuff that lasts 20 years when it's going to be outdated in 5 years? So there's different ways to look at this. Like I said, we negotiated huge discounts, and according to me, it's actually cheaper than Eskom from what we've received so far.
I'm very unfamiliar with what can be achieved with solar panels. I'm anticipating that you require vast amounts of sunlight to keep the power going, to keep your batteries full. And in South Africa, while we do enjoy sunny climates, we also have a substantial amount of cloudy days. I'm not sure just how effective solar panels are throughout the year. Maybe you can fill me in.
Well, again, 80% of in South Africa, about 70 to 80% of all your energy requirements in a house is for either space or water heating. So PV actually doesn't need to run that much. If you just want to run lights and TVs and that, you actually don't need a lot. If you sort out your water heating with solar geysers, and my personal house, I did glazing on the windows, I did insulation in the roof floors, so my energy consumption went right down. And I need a very, very small solar system, because I just don't use that much. You just need to have the right mindset. If you're going to try to run the entire house on solar, then yes, you're probably not going to do it. But if you do it right, then definitely,
You just strike me as being an enormously practical person as well, and the hardware behind you really illustrates that. I just wish I had that kind of ability to see where I need to do these things. I suppose it's really a case of just, I mean, I'd imagine you've got that advice on your website, have you, of how to actually reduce energy consumption?
Correct. Well, part of this whole project was to educate people. So we want to go out there and we're going to develop a magazine, and we're going to tell people, this is what the ideal house looks like. Glaze your windows. You can actually glaze existing windows. You don't even need to replace your windows. Put thin pink in your roof. Do what you can just to first fix insulation. That's your starting point. Then you change to LED lights, and then you change water heating to either gas or solar. Not PV, actual solar. There's a lot of things you can do, and like I said earlier, you'll actually be surprised when you see how little energy you need once you take all those other steps first. To run LED lights in a house doesn't take a lot of power, Kettles, yes. Anything that generates heat typically uses a lot of energy, so kettles, microwave stoves, those things do use a lot of energy, but you just by not using all of it together, you can reduce the size of the system you need. There's lots of ways. There's lots of ways to do it and look at it. But the key is to change your mindset and to be willing to take that leap and to change the way you live.
Evan, I always thought that Cape Townians were a lot more forward-thinking and were a lot more environmentally aware. And I'm even going back to the 80s where environmental issues in South Africa had a very, very low priority. We had political strife, which really dominated our thinking at the time. How receptive have you found Cape Townians to the notion of going green, of the kind of environmental issues, renewables that you're talking about in your work?
Yeah, David, I think there's a huge appetite for it down here. I mean, I think you're spot on. There's a huge amount of environmental awareness amongst Cape Townians and in the Western Cape, and I think people are looking for solutions. But even still, I still think that consumers out there still battle sometimes with a lack of credible information. You know, things that they're getting told or they're reading about. When they're ultimately asking for advice, someone's normally trying to sell them something. So we haven't seen as big an uptake on solar water heaters and the like energy efficient equipment and lighting and building technologies as you might think. But I think there's a huge hunger, and I think this power crisis has really just switched people on to trying to access information. And when we're speaking to our members down here who do rooftop installations for businesses and households, they've said literally in the last few months they don't do any outward sales calls anymore. They're just getting people calling them all the time looking for quotes and looking for solutions. So I think we really have reached that tipping point already.
Ryan gave us some very good practical advice, and I think it's summarizing changing our attitudes. What advice have you got? Talk practicalities for me. What are the projects that you see immediately that are producing good results?
Yeah, look, I think Ryan's actually summed it up super eloquently. The first thing you've got to do is looking at minimizing your energy use, right? Get as energy efficient as possible, and then you can look at alternative sources of heating and of power. You can reduce your demand on the grid substantially by just thinking slightly differently about stuff, and it doesn't all have to cost you a huge amount of money. I think beyond that as well, in dealing with the power crisis, putting solar panels on your roof isn't going to help you in the evenings when the power goes out unless you've got some kind of storage technology as well. But I think that's about being pragmatic too. Batteries are expensive, the costs are coming down, but you can put in a fairly small battery system that can run LED lights in your house, your Wi-Fi router, maybe a TV, and make sure that when the lights do go out, you've actually got some kind of power generation where you've still got some power in the home and you can run the basics. And these aren't running into hundreds of thousands of rands. You can get small UPS systems or battery systems linked to a small solar system, and that can set you back a couple of tens of thousands of rand and actually give you power when the rest of the neighborhood's gone out.
So if I'm investing 10,000 rand, let's use that as the ballpark. How quickly do I get that back? I think that people are going to balk at the idea of forking out 10 grand without realizing how quickly they're going to save 10,000 rand. Can you give me any even ballpark figures on that?
Sure. So maybe a solar water heater for a household of 4 people, maybe it's going to cost you 15 or 20 grand, and you'll probably make that back in 4 years, 3 to 4 years. So PV system, that's going to have a bit of a longer payback period. You're probably looking at somewhere between 6 and 7 years for that. If you add batteries to that, maybe a little more. However, how do you place a value on having power when everyone else is experiencing a blackout? There's load shedding. I think it's not necessarily purely an economic decision around putting in batteries to make sure that you can watch TV and access the internet and have a few lights on when the lights are out in your neighborhood. But I think that gives a sense. I mean, energy efficiency is certainly the intervention that's going to give you the fastest payback periods. But solar PV is not that far behind, and I think Ryan has alluded to that in the numbers they're talking about. If you're paying the top-end tariffs for electricity in South Africa over 2 rand a kilowatt hour, payback periods might be as low as five years for solar PV.
Adam, I'm relying on you to be my ears and eyes on the world of technology. Is technology developing faster than because of the demand? Are we seeing dramatic exponential improvements in solar efficiency, in battery capacity, for example?
Absolutely, and it's particularly in battery capacity. And there's a wonderful organisation here in South Africa called Hydrogen SA, and they've got 3 or 4 campuses around the country. They do a lot of work on hydrogen fuel cell storage. They're currently working with Airbus to look at putting hydrogen fuel cells on planes. They're putting hydrogen fuel cells on mining vehicles so they can run engines underground. And they're doing some really incredible stuff and bringing the prices at that level of storage down. And that will blow everything that's out there at the moment out the water. I mean, it's way beyond lead acid battery capacity. And there's a lot of other ramifications from that, because you've got to remember this isn't just a middle class problem. They're working with some of the township villages to put large fuel cell generators that work off of renewable energies and take entire townships off the grid. There's a couple of trial programs in the Free State going on between Anglo-Plat, Ballard and Hydrogen SA are collaborating there. So the technology really is coming along really quickly. I mean, as you said earlier, Elon Musk in the US has announced that he's looking into battery technology. People are assuming that's for the home based on the work they've done with the Tesla car there. Everybody is looking at batteries now for the first time in a long time, and I think they're making very rapid strides on that.
Because we need the big industry to focus their attention on this, don't we? And it's good to see somebody like Elon Musk, like Tesla, working on solutions. And obviously they want the solutions for their cars. We've seen so many vehicle manufacturers understanding that the hybrid car is the future. It isn't some gimmick anymore, and they need to make more efficient fuel, more efficient batteries. So with that kind of impetus, you would imagine that the technology will change even more rapidly, won't it?
And a lot of it, as I say, a lot of it is happening here, because a lot of the problems that South Africa faces are really energy problems. That's across Africa. I mean, Ethiopia survives on about 2 gigawatts boilerplate capacity for 90 million people. So the power problem is a very African problem, and you've got our mining companies are putting a lot of time and effort into fixing this, because they can't afford to be offline, and they want to run their vehicles 24 hours a day and stay up. You've got our banks and data centers. I know people in Pretoria who are doing amazing stuff around keeping data centers up and running that are now moving their technology into the domestic area. There's a guy who's created a completely South African designed and built inverter charger that will switch between renewable grid and battery power, depending on what the current demand of your home is and where the best supply is coming from. So I think that there's such a lot of stuff going on, and you don't even have to look as far as the US and Tesla to see it.
That is so exciting. It's something I wasn't aware of. How did you describe them? Hydrogen cell batteries? Is that the expression?
So there's the organisation is Hydrogen SA, and they're actually a government-funded research organisation. They're one of their main campuses is affiliated to, I think it's University of the Western Cape, and they're doing a lot of research into hydrogen fuel cells. Now they work by converting electricity from basically from taking hydrogen out of the air, running it over a battery-style system and through a membrane. You create electricity, and the waste byproduct is water. So it's a very clean way of generating electricity. Now the storage element comes from producing that hydrogen in the first place. So the system that you build is one that generates hydrogen, which you store. Then you feed hydrogen back into the fuel cell and turn it into electricity. And that can be done either on site, or it can be done at a separate facility. And I mean, there's a lot of people looking at hydrogen fuel cells for the home now as well, and running those off of renewable. You've got an enormous amount of capacity, way more than you do with traditional batteries.
Ryan was talking about the changes, the rapid changes in technology with regards to solar panels. Can you shed a bit more light on that? How quickly is that technology evolving?
Again, I mean, solar panel technology is evolving enormously fast. I mean, there was a sort of spurious online rumor a couple of years ago going around about how the world had invested more power producing solar cells than solar cells had ever actually produced in their lifespan. But that was kind of going around to a lot of people who were naysaying renewable energy. And the reason was just because the number of panels being produced had ramped up so quickly in such a short period of time. So again, you've got researchers all over the world looking at how to improve the efficiency of solar cells, improving the lenses that are fitted on top of the cells to increase the amount of sunlight that comes through. Ryan mentioned before that you can improve the efficiency of the solar cell by putting it on a tracking system so that it moves with the sun during the day. And you can build one of those today with off-the-shelf components for less than £1,000. I mean, they sell all the bits you need to make it at Communica, and it's not a complicated thing to do. But the technology is improving very, very quickly.
Evan, let me bring you in, because on a recent visit down to the Cape, I noticed many more wind farms being established. I remember seeing some just outside Darling. And then there was an area, and I can't actually, I'm racking my brains to remember what the drive was, and we passed through many, many massive turbines, the most incredible sight. How viable is wind technology at the moment in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, David, it's really been quite a fascinating story. Wind power over the last 5 years has rapidly become the cheapest form of new generation available in South Africa. So the wind farms currently being built, and through the Renewable Energy Independent Power Producers Program, are producing power, selling it to Eskom, well cheaper than the price of power that's going to come out of Medupi and Kusile. And probably, 20–30% cheaper than the end costs from new coal-fired power stations. So there's a lot of myths out there that kind of need to be busted, but it's the cleanest and cheapest form of new generation capacity we can add, and those farms are getting built in a matter of months, not decades. So it's really something that we're seeing across the country. These things coming on stream, on time, on budget, and producing more power than the Eskom grid operators actually expected them to. And there's recently been a study published by the CSIR that showed that last year South Africa saved over 800 million rand on the costs of diesel that would have been utilized on the open cycle gas turbines from the power that came from the Round 1 projects and the renewables program. And that was at prices that are probably close to double the price that they are today.
That's absolutely amazing. It's something, again, that I wasn't aware of. I do recall in 2008 when we were going through our first load shedding debacle, and talking to people in the renewable sector, which at the time people scoffed at, and it was derided as not being cost effective. One of the problems raised by people trying to punt renewable energy was that Eskom was balking at the idea of buying power back, of allowing people to feed back into the grid, private power producers. That clearly is a thing of the past then, Adam.
Yeah, I think, look, it's been a national government policy decision to diversify our energy mix. The Integrated Resource Plan of 2010 committed to building about 18 gigawatts of renewable energy power by 2030. And largely this is shaped by the commitments that we made in Copenhagen around curtailing our carbon emissions profile. Our carbon emissions in South Africa are inextricably linked to our coal-fired power production. So putting a limit on that meant that we had to look for other sources. What people criticized at the time as being something that was going to subsidize unviable technologies has in a very, very short space of time turned into the exact opposite situation where renewables are now producing power cheaper than fossil fuel sources. There's a lot of talk about gas being brought into South Africa. We won't produce gas anywhere nearly close to the price of wind power, nor solar power on its own. But it is a good complementing source so that we've got capacity that can follow wind and solar when the sun's not shining or the wind's not blowing. But it really is a true success story, and it's because these technologies have been deployed at scale around the world. The cost of solar panels has come down by 80% in less than the last decade. And that looks set to continue, and I think we're about to see a similar thing happening with battery technology. And for me, that's truly going to change the game.
Adam, I'm going to come to you in a couple of seconds to ask you for your views on the wind power technology. But let me bring up Ryan now, who appears to have disappeared off my screen.
I'm still here.
Okay, well, it looks like you're in the dark at the moment, Ryan, but we can certainly hear you. I'll tell you what, let's see if we can get you back, and let me go to Adam. Hold on, no, you are back. Okay. Look, I'll tell you what, I can't see you, but maybe others can. Because you're the man with the wind turbine behind you, I'd imagine that in Johannesburg, because we don't have windy days, wind generated power doesn't feature on your landscape, or does it?
No, not for residential applications. When you've got a lot of open space, it's ideal. They are noisy, they're big, they're a bit of an eyesore. But I mean, they're great. They are great. But in the right area, not in the middle of a neighborhood.
Okay.
It's for our purposes that we decided it's not going to work. We're going to go with solar only.
Now, I've got Amanda, who's just sent she says, not a question, just a comment. I'm learning so much. Dare I say there's light at the end of the turbine? That might well be the case, but let me go to you then, Adam. Tell me about wind power technology and the changes being made. We've heard this wonderful story from Evan. Do you agree with what he's been saying?
Absolutely, and I mean, I'm from the UK originally, and we have a huge number of turbines installed there now. I can't tell you how many, but I know for the last 20 years I've been driving past a wind farm in Cornwall whenever I go to visit my parents, and I'd actually disagree with Ryan on that. I think wind farms are beautiful. They're lovely things. They produce power for free. They stay up. They don't cause any damage. You can't hear them unless you're stood right underneath them, and at the end of the day, if you want to take them down, you can take them down and no harm done. There's that wonderful adage of the environmentalist movement when they sort of come up against naysayers, as you put it earlier. Oh no, we made the world a better place. Imagine if we were wrong about climate change and everything. Badly told joke. But wind power is amazing. I mean, certainly in Europe. It is providing, I think it's around, I haven't got the figures in front of me, but I think it's around about 20% of energy in some countries now, and obviously particularly around the North Sea areas where there are strong wind currents and so on. They're looking at offshore wind as well, but that's not quite as cheap as onshore. But yeah, no, I agree entirely. Wind is definitely the way forward. That's what Port Elizabeth is for, after all, isn't it? The wind.
Yeah, that's right. Well, particularly Cape Town is. Joburg, as I say, we don't know much about the wind. Cape Townians, Evan, you'll agree with me, I'm sure, that they know exactly which wind direction, from which direction the wind is coming in, what that means. Joburgers, if the wind blows, it just means which side of the braai we've got to stand in to get out of the smoke. But given the advances, not only in thinking, and I think that's the message we've heard from Ryan, you've got to change your thinking. Cape Townians tend to be a little bit more forward-thinking on these matters. Given what you're achieving and the objectives you've set out, are you close to having neighborhoods, houses going completely off-grid?
I think at the higher end of the spectrum, absolutely. I think many customers are already doing it. The City of Cape Town's put in place clear rules for if people do want to put solar PV on their roofs and feed that back into the grid. And so I think we're seeing a bigger uptake of that, in particular where customers have a significant electricity bill. It does still make sense for them to feed back in. For customers that use slightly less power, it's the cost of the meter, the cost of the inverter makes it, and the cost of the daily connection charge to the grid means that perhaps going off grid may be a slightly more viable solution. But I think we're still seeing a lot of people putting in diesel generators, and frankly, that's sad. It's not really what we need. We don't need to be burning more diesel. We need to be utilizing the resources that we've got, and I think it's just a matter of time before the financing products are available, the information is clear to everybody, and I think we're on the cusp of a rooftop solar revolution in South Africa.
Ryan, can you? Oh, again, you go blank on my screen, but
yeah.
Because you are still there, we're going to keep the conversation going. Evan just mentioned there the financing packages. Are the financial houses looking at you and assisting your projects in any way? Do they understand what you want to achieve and are happy to help people with financial plans?
We've been approached by a couple of IPPs, independent power producers, who structured a couple of deals. So yeah, I mean there are different options. You know, we're currently working through it. We're trying to see what options are available, including going to the banks, getting very low interest rate loans against people's bonds. You know, the project's still in a very early stage, but you know we are busy negotiating that, and that's definitely part of the plan.
I've got a question from Mariette, who says, I have a gas geyser and a gas stove. So she's fine as far as that's concerned. Her question, though, is how do I go about getting my fridge, lights, etc. off the grid? What advice have you got for her, Ryan?
Well, I'd say, you know, she definitely has to sort out the insulation. Get your roof insulated, insulate your windows by putting glazing. In Europe, you've got double glazing. South Africa, we don't need double glazing. It doesn't get that cold. You can just put a single glazing on your existing windows. Think pink in the roof. That would greatly bring down your heating requirements during winter. Even in summer, it keeps your house cool. And then, you know, yeah, if she's got solar, if she's got gas for cooking and for water heating, then she doesn't need a very big system at all.
Okay, she wants the lights. She wants the lights in the fridge off the grid. So what are you suggesting there? Solar panels.
Correct, yeah. So first of all, also change the lights to LED, and then, yeah, solar panels, more than enough.
Okay. Let me go back to Adam now, so we get somebody on picture for a change. Adam, as we come to the end here, what kind of advice do you have for anybody whose interest has been piqued and is looking now favorably at the idea of going off the grid? What advice have you got?
I'd start with the pain points. I mean, the biggest problem everyone's got right now is surviving load shedding. That's the main point. And what you don't want to do is exactly what Evan said. Don't go out and buy a diesel generator. You know, there are very good off-the-shelf systems now for solar backup that will keep your house up and running for a good 4 hours or so to get through load shedding. If you're feeling handy, you can build one for about. We've looked at. We reckon you can buy a kit from Macro for about $4,000. You can probably build something better for $1,500. So you know this is a small investment to see how it goes, and it's not about saving money. That's about keeping yourself going through load shedding. And then you know I agree with the consensus. You know saving, not using electricity is a better way forward in the short term than looking at going off grid. Make your house more efficient, use more efficient appliances, look at saving money. But going off grid, it's definitely, you know, it's there, and it's not expensive to do, and there are more and more off-the-shelf products coming through. There are people working on systems. Econet in Zambia in Zimbabwe rather, has a system which they will come and install in a couple of hours. It looks like a bike shed that you stick in your garden. Has everything you need to take your house completely off grid. For I think that's about 150,000 rand. You know, so look at the options. That's really a strong piece of advice. There are so many options out there. Don't rush into something that's not going to work for you over the next 10 years or so.
I've been trawling all of your websites, and I can't remember on whose website I found the rather disturbing news that inverters are not the answer. And that's what I've got to solve my problems. I've got an inverter, and I run a whole lot of extension cables, and the router, obviously the router's got to be the one that's working, because then the iPads can get the internet. It runs the TVs, it runs the computer, and then we've got battery-powered lighting. And we're home and hosed on that. What is your view on inverters? I don't think was it you guys who were saying inverters are not the answer?
It was actually us. You know, we.
Oh, let me go to you then, Ryan. Where are you to get your? Okay, and you're dark, but we can hear you. Why are inverters no good, Ryan?
Inverter is fine, but you need a renewable energy backup source that powers it, because if you just run the Eskom grid to charge batteries, and when you've got load shedding, you run your inverter box. As soon as the power comes back on, you've got 40,000 inverters that want to recharge. The things are causing load shedding. They're not a solution. They're actually a cause for load shedding, and people don't realize that. You know, they go buy a 4,000 rand inverter so that they can sit through load shedding, but when the power comes back on, then zoom. A huge load on the system, you know. It's not helping anybody.
Evan, what do you think of that? Are inverters no good?
I think.
Sorry, go ahead, Adam.
No, sorry, go ahead.
Okay, well, let's go to you, Adam. You wanted to comment on that.
No, the only thing I was going to add to the inverter conversation is that the one place I can see them being useful is all of the municipalities and Eskom are now looking at, they want to introduce tiered tariffs based on time of day, so you will pay more for your electricity during peak hours and less off-peak. And that's the one area I can see an inverter being quite useful, is if you can run your house during peak times off the batteries and then charge them overnight. That's actually helping the grid in terms of stability of supply and so on. So there is a use case there where I can kind of see them being part of the future.
Okay, time is up. I think we've got about a minute left. So Adam, I'm going to ask you to tell us, for people who want to get more information from Hypertext Media, from Hypertext Africa, from htxt.co.za, is that the website? htxt.co.za. They'll get some good, valuable information on technology from you. Absolutely,
absolutely. The best, in fact, obviously.
Obviously. We wouldn't have had it any other way.
I'd like to work with Ryan in the future and help him with those magazines he was talking about as well.
Nice one. Adam Oxford, you're a star. Thank you very much. Evan, to you, for Green Cape, what's the website that we should be looking at?
greencape.co.za, David.
And you've got a lot of information there about your projects, your objectives as well. It's quite comprehensive. I think it's an invaluable resource there as well. And I presume it's a constantly updated website as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it should actually be fairly well refreshed within the next couple of weeks as well.
Okay, Evan Rice, you've been a star. Thank you very much for your insights. And Ryan Beach, the person you're the trendsetter, Ryan, certainly in Gauteng. To get more information about the Parkhurst Village Residents and Business Owners Association, actually it's the first time I realized you're a village, Parkhurst Village Residents and Business Owners Association. What's your website?
Parkhurstvillage.com, www.parkhurstvillage.com. Or you can email me at gogreen@parkhurst.org.za.
Ryan Beach, thank you very much for your time, and thank you very much for watching this particular IRIS session, brought to you by BrightRock. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I hope you've now had your interest piqued and that you are now seriously considering going off the grid. I'm David O'Sullivan, saying goodbye. I look forward to seeing you at our next IRIS session. Thank you for watching.